Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. And Chris, would you mind admitting any folks
Okay.
that come in as late stragglers?
Absolutely, I can do that.
All right. So, first of all, welcome to today's presentation. Today is a brief overview of Zoom, and what we're going to cover today is the basics of, not only what happens when we're inside a Zoom meeting, but also kind of the logistics of setting up and customizing your account. So when you are creating meetings, you can kind of have a preset group of settings ready to go. So anytime you create a meeting, you can set it to automatically record, enable the waiting room, allow you to stream live to YouTube, and things like that. So the first thing that we're going to do, like I said, is we're actually going to show you what it looks like to log into Zoom on the web and go through and kind of customize your client and customize your account through Zoom. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And I'm going to share that out. And just give me a quick nod if you can see my screen. You can? Okay. So and able to log into your Zoom account, there's a variety of different ways that we can do it. If you're on a mobile device or a Chromebook, you can download a Zoom app. Also, at any time, you can actually go out to the web portal, which is just zoom.us, and sign in with your Zoom credentials there to get access to the settings. So that's what we're going to do right now. Is I'm going to go ahead and I'm at zoom.us. I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And in this case, I'm actually going to log in with one of our Zoom admin accounts. But what most of you are going to do when it actually comes time to sign up, if you haven't signed up for your Zoom account yet or you're waiting for it, is that if you have a district that is with Google, you can come down here, sign in with your Google credentials, and it'll automatically activate your account for you. But I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And this is kind of the Zoom administration page where you can come in and you can really sort of start customizing your settings, start customizing your IDs and things of that nature. So to kind of scroll down the main profile page here first, just to give you an idea, in Zoom, everybody kind of gets their own individual link and personal meeting ID. That they can hand out to folks if they need to join a meeting or something along those lines. Anytime that you schedule an appointment, this link's also going to pop up, so it's not something you need to know off the top of your head. If I scroll down here, you'll see the user type that you're going to have. Most of you, and especially if you're coming through the Mohawk RIC, for accounts are set up with just the meeting 300. So basically what that means is you'll be able to host a meeting with up to 300 participants in it at any given time. So you will have the ability to have 300 people in an individual meeting if you choose to do so. And then if I scroll down here, click on that, I can actually come in and configure my calendar services. So basically what that means is I can set up my Zoom account when I schedule something to automatically go to my Google Calendar, to go to my Exchange calendar, or go to my Office 365 calendar. So I can come in and I can set these up. So anytime I create something in Zoom, it's automatically going to share that calendar invite over into my district email account. So that's kind of the profile page. The next part I want to cover is down here under the settings. So we're logged into our Zoom account. If I come under the settings area, this is where we can really come in and customize some of the different pieces that we have available in Zoom. So the first thing that pops up in the meeting is this security tab. And the first option right here is the waiting room. So the waiting room is where you all ended up first. When you initially tried to log into the meeting, you were kind of in that little waiting area. And all that means is they sit in the waiting area until the host actually goes out and admits them into the room. So I, as the host, would have the option of when people get to join my room. So if you just don't want people, randomly jumping in, you want to get things set up before you actually, let your students in or let the meeting attendees in, you have the option to do that. If I come down here, you can see who I can set those options for, whether it's everyone, users not in your domain, so anybody outside your district domain would have to wait, or users that are not in the account and not part of allowed domains. In this case, if we keep it to everyone, that just means everybody that that tries to join one of your meetings, unless you turn it off, will be put inside of a waiting room. And then I can also come in and customize the waiting room a little bit. So I can add an icon, and then I can come in and type in a description. So, in this case, you have been placed in Mr. Lalone's waiting room. Please hold while we, finish getting set up for the meeting, and we will let you in as soon as it's ready to go. So close that out. The other piece here, require a passcode when scheduling new meetings. This is just good from a data security standpoint. That way, even though they get put in the waiting room, they still need a password or a passcode to join that meeting. I'm sure a lot of you have heard when, school districts initially started going virtual, especially with their board meetings, they would kind of send out these Zoom links or Google Meet links, and anybody and everybody from the public just kind of joined and, was sharing all sorts of, obscene content and things like that in the middle of the meeting, just to kind of, joke with the meeting and things like that. In this case, with the password and the waiting room enabled, not only do they need more than just the hyperlink, they need a password to get in. And then if you don't recognize them and they shouldn't be in your meeting, you don't have to admit them to the meeting. So that just adds those kind of 2 layers of security to the meetings that you're setting up when you get ready to set that up within Zoom. And then I can kind of scroll down here, and these 2 options, only authenticated users, that would mean that only people that are in my Zoom domain would have access to any Zoom meeting that I have. So we want to keep that off in case you're working with teachers in another district, or, a parent or something along those lines. And then as I continue to scroll down here, just some of the other options. I can start meetings automatically by turning my camera on, or I can do it individually. I can automatically turn the video on of all my participants. So as soon as you guys join, I can hit an option to automatically turn those cameras on. They'll have the option to turn them off if they want to, but let's say, you're taking quick attendance for your students. As soon as they join that meeting, the camera will automatically turn on. You'll get to see your students, know that they're there, and then if they make the choice to turn off the camera, they have the ability to do that. The join before host piece, that kind of is, one of those things where if you don't join your meeting and one of your participants gets there before you, if you turn that on, that just means they're allowed in the room without you being there. Again, from that security standpoint, we always recommend having that off, because that way we want you guys to be the ones driving the meetings and kind of setting up that stuff. We also have this option here, which is mute participants upon entry. So basically what that means is as soon as they join, the system itself will go in and toggle everybody's mics off. So that way they won't be able to, connect and then automatically start talking, or not realize that their mic's not muted, or things along those lines. We can set it up to default, make sure that that's muted on entry. And then some of the other things that are set up here in this option, right here, there's like different chat options. So we can set it up to where if you want to set up private chat, so that means, students or mentors or whoever's in your meeting room, they can kind of send private messages to each other. I can turn that off if I don't want that available, and I just want it to be kind of an attendee to panelist kind of thing. I can also prevent participants from saving chat. So if I set that up, basically, if you wanted to save a record of the chat, it wouldn't be allowed. Only I would have a record of the chat, and I'd be able to distribute it however I would like. And I'll cancel that. File transferring. So this basically means that I can upload files into the chat. So if there's a resource that I want to share out with my students, or if it's a resource I need to share out with my teacher group or whoever I'm having a meeting with, I have the ability to upload that file. And then a couple other options here, like these, these feedback ones we don't have to worry about. But the co-host area, basically what that means is I can make anybody in my room a co-host. All I have to do is right click on their name and make them a co-host. I'll show you what that looks like in a little while. Polling, we can create polls on the fly within our Zoom meeting. So I can go in, I can create questions for a poll, pop it up for my students or whoever I'm meeting with to be able to take a quick poll. Screen sharing. So what I'm doing right now is basically sharing out my desktop, and that kind of gives me the option to either I can do it or I can set it up automatically So all of you would have that option as well. It just depends on how I want to set up that classroom. And some of the other features here, there's, depending on if it's turned on or not, there's some whiteboard content, there's some annotations pieces. There's also a remote control setup. So basically what that means from, let's say, a tech help aspect is that I can be logged into a Zoom room, you share your screen up, and I can hit a button to say, hey, can I take over your screen? And I'll actually be able to, take over your screen and manipulate your desktop to kind of, from our standpoint, which is usually a tech help standpoint, we can go in and we can address issues on a different machine. And do things like that. And then some of this other stuff is like non-verbal feedback and the meeting reactions, and we'll kind of go through those. Essentially, those are kind of mini emojis that if you look inside your Zoom room, you'll kind of be able to see what some of those look like, either in the participant area or at the very bottom of the screen. You can toggle those on and off. Allow participants to rename themselves. That's something that we always set up. Like Chris said in the beginning, with the folks that are putting in their names in the chat, like if you just come in as Tim, you can go in, right click on your name and rename it to say, Tim Smith, and put in your last name, just so like for attendance purposes, you can kind of change that up. Or we've had it happen before where like students log in, or parents would log into their kids' Chromebook accounts, and it'll be like, Mini Unicorn 24 is logging into the Zoom meeting, and they obviously don't want that up, so they can right click on their name and change it on the fly. So a couple of other features. Here is breakout rooms. We can set it up so hosts can set up breakout rooms. So if you want to send your students into groups through virtual learning, we can set that up. I hit the breakout room button. I can distribute my students however I wish, start the breakout room, and they essentially get their own little meeting set up as they go. Closed captioning. And this is a little bit misleading. It almost makes it sound like, oh wow, these meetings have closed captioning built in, and they don't. What they do have is the ability to essentially assign somebody a closed captioning role to type in the transcript as the meeting's going on. So I don't want to mislead you and say like closed captioning is built into this. It's actually not. It's just the option to give somebody the ability to set up a transcript. Another option here where it says far end camera control. This is one of those things where, again, we don't recommend it, because what that allows is us as the host, we can basically access somebody else's computer, or access somebody else's camera on the other side.
That's all right.
Oh, sorry. So it's one of those things where, if they're using like a video conference unit, like a Cisco unit or something like that, or a webcam like kind of on a swivel where I can have the directions, I can actually turn this on and I'd be able to steer the camera on the other side of somebody's account. Underneath here is the virtual backgrounds, and I'll kind of show this a little bit more in the Zoom client rather than do it here, just because I'm logged into an admin account right now. But basically what this is I can add essentially a green screen effect background onto anything. So it's one of those things, if I'm remoting from home, or if I'm, we've had folks, literally in a broom closet, because that was the only place they could have a meeting. They could put up like a quick background behind them to make it look like they're in an office. Or in this case, you can see, they give us like the Golden Gate Bridge, grassy background, the earth, things like that. But you can upload your own images, and I'll kind of show that in a few minutes as well. And then a lot of these other ones, we can kind of gloss over for now. But one of the other ones that I want to point out, and this is especially good for administrators or for those teachers that have YouTube pages set up, is you don't necessarily have to, invite your students to the Zoom meeting. I can actually activate live streaming here through Facebook and YouTube, or Workplace, or whatever streaming service you would like. So basically what that means is I can log into Zoom. I can hit go live to YouTube. If I have a YouTube channel, it'll basically send my Zoom stream as a live feed directly out to YouTube. So that way I can send my students there, or if it's, we do this a lot with board meetings. So instead of having the public kind of join the meeting, we push it out to YouTube and have them actually watch the live feed on YouTube. Also, when it's done, it'll create that recording on YouTube as well, so there'll be an archive for it. We can also archive it in Zoom as well, which we'll touch on in a couple minutes here. But I kind of wanted to be sure to kind of gloss over a lot of those. I think the rest of these, I just going to kind of gloss over for now. I wanted to be sure I kind of hit the main ones here as you're actually, getting started, kind of configuring that account and what some of those mean. And I neglected to mention this before, but if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I have Chris Schaefer with me, also from the RIC, that can kind of field the questions as they go. And if there's one that needs attention or needs me to show off a little bit, Chris can interrupt me and I can.
There was one thing I just want to touch on quickly, Derek. Someone asked in the chat about these settings that we're looking at now.
Yes.
Do these need to be set up for each meeting? And these are actually account level settings.
Yes.
So when you set these up and you save them, they are applied to all of your upcoming meetings as kind of your template of settings. They're your defaults now once you set them. Yes. And you do have the ability to change these things once you're in the meeting, but these are becoming your new defaults for all meetings going forward.
Yep. And I talked about it before, but we also have the ability to record meetings directly in Zoom. So if you want an archive of everything that you're doing, or if you have students that are absent that day and you want them to essentially, be able to access the content, there's a bunch of different ways we can do it. If you look at your Zoom window, I believe it's up in the upper left-hand corner, you can see there's a little icon there that just says recording. So that basically is letting you know that I'm recording the session. If I'm an instructor and I kind of hit that record button after the meeting starts, the users are going to be prompted to say, hey, the host just decided to record. Do you consent to this meeting being recorded? And they just hit yes, and then they can continue on with the meeting. So talking about that, when we do record a meeting, and I just kind of want to show everybody where they're housed and what they look like, the recordings are actually housed in the Zoom cloud. So over here on the left-hand side, because I'm logged into my account, if I click on the recordings tab here, it's going to pull up all of the recordings that I've set up or that I've done in the last couple of weeks. So you can see I have some board meetings here, the teacher meetings that are going on and things of that nature. And all I have to do is I can click on it. And you can see right here, I can download all 3 files. So if I want to download them, upload them into Google or something along those lines so they can have access to it, I can do that. They also have right here what's called a shareable link. So I can copy that. And if I open it up in a new tab, just to show you what it looks like, you'll see that the meeting streams, the audio transcript, so basically all the words that are said will pop up over here on the right-hand side. And I can kind of fast forward the meeting a little bit. But you can see I can just share that link out, in my Google Classroom or wherever else, and my students will be able to go in and kind of see the live stream of that particular meeting or that particular lesson.
One nice feature with the transcript too is that transcript is searchable. So if your students missed part of the lecture or need to review something after the fact, they can just do a quick keyword search and it'll look through and it'll highlight just that portion of the transcript for them and they can just catch that part of the video again.
Yep, exactly. So that portion is kind of the setup for, configuring your account and just kind of showing you where the recordings are. The next thing I want to talk about is actually scheduling meetings. So there's a couple different ways that we can do this. Once again, I can be logged into zoom.us and I can click on the meetings tab over here. Or I can open up my Zoom client, which if you have a PC or Mac or even a Chromebook, there's an app. I can actually open this meeting box up as well. They both do the same thing. It just depends on what you're more comfortable with, whether or not you want to schedule a meeting through the web portal or the app itself. In this case, I'm just going to do it through the app.
Derek, can you minimize your browser window? Because I came to the front in our view.
Yeah, how's that? Is that better?
We're not seeing your Zoom window.
You're not seeing my Zoom window. Well, okay. All right, so we'll do it through the web. Okay. So if I come in and I click on my meetings tab, I can come in, and in this case, sorry, let me go up. In the upper right-hand corner here, here we go. Sorry, my camera window was in the way and I couldn't see what I was trying to get to. Okay. Over here on the right-hand side, when we click on the meetings tab, there's this schedule meeting button. So if I click on that, this is where I can come in and I can customize those meetings. So if it's one of those things where I'm meeting with my students every day, I can either set it up to be a recurring meeting for every day, or I can come in and I can just give them my personal room and just use this room over and over again, because your personal room will never change. So that way that link will always stay stable and you won't have to, create a scheduled meeting every single day. If you just want them to meet your personal meeting room, pop that in your Google Classroom or whatever you're using for an LMS, you can set that up. This is also good for quick one-to-one meetings, with, other folks in the department or a student or something along those lines. But if it is something I do want to schedule and I do want to have it in my calendar, I can click on this meetings tab, come over to schedule meeting. In this case, I'm just going to call it test meeting. I can add a description. I can set my date and time. I can set it up to be a recurring meeting. So if it is something that happens every single day, or I can say every 2 or 3 days, depending on the rotating schedules that you guys have set up, I can set it up for every 2 days, so on and so forth. I can set an end date on it. Registration. So basically what this does is, if you want kind of a running tally of who's going to be at this meeting, and this is one of those things, we do it for board meetings, so the public actually has to register for the meeting, so we have a record of who's joining, just to kind of decrease in the opportunity for people to kind of troll the meeting or do inappropriate things. So if I turn on this registration button, basically it would mean that I would have to send out a link to the people that I want to attend the meeting. They would have to pre-register, and then they would be able to join the meeting. If we're using this for the purposes of class or quick meetings or things like that, we don't need that registration piece. So
Very quickly, I'm sorry, before you move on,
Yeah.
There's a question about using your personal meeting room for everyday classes instead of using separate meeting IDs. Can you just kind of touch on that again and what the difference would be between using your personal meeting room and setting up these specific meeting spaces?
I think, in the end, it's just it's a matter of convenience. So like my personal meeting room, this will always stay the same. So this link will always be the same. I can download it to my calendar. I can kind of do whatever I want with it. Whereas if I actually go in and schedule each individual room, each individual meeting, it's going to create a separate link for every one of those meetings. So it's one of those things where, if you're okay with that, and if you come in and if you want to do the recurring, like set up a week's worth of meetings right up front with my students, I can go in and do that. And it'll create all the IDs and things like that. So really it's a matter of, what you're more comfortable with. If you don't want your students having access to your personal meeting room to kind of jump in whenever they want, you can schedule them, 5 days out at a time and things of that nature. So that's really the big difference, is the personal meeting room's just your space for like quick meetings, but also it's a matter of convenience. If you don't want to keep recreating that same schedule over and over and over again, I can use my personal room rather than scheduling the meetings individually. All right, so jumping back, meeting ID, I can generate it automatically. That just creates that random kind of number code right here. Security, so this is where we can enable our waiting room for all of our, for whoever we want. So that way that depends who can come in and who can't. Our passcode, which is just a password, and you can see I can set that to whatever I want. Zoom gives us one, but I can change that to something a little more user-friendly, like Mr. Lalone's class or something like that. Underneath that, basically I can set this up to be, hosts and participants both have the option to turn on their video, or automatically turn on video. So that way, as soon as they join, the camera will turn on, or I can give them the option just by turning it off and allowing my students to turn that camera back on. So underneath that, it says audio. So it allows telephone connections, and then computer audio connections, which would be through your device, or you can offer both. One thing to kind of be aware of if you do allow telephone is just to make sure that it's coming from the US, which you can see right here, because there is one of those things where if a phone's used an X amount and it's coming from the wrong numbers, then the district's going to get billed for the calls. So where possible, and I know there's exceptions where, students may not have access to computer audio and things like that, and they have to call in, but it's just something to be aware of as you're setting up these meetings, that if you have a lot of students that are physically calling in, there might be a toll cost that happens beforehand. And then finally, our last options in our meeting here are enable join before host, which we talked about. So that basically means if I'm not in the room yet and I hit that button, my participants can join before I get there. Mute participants upon entry. So if I, check that box, it'll automatically mute everybody as they come into the room, and then they'll have to unmute themselves to actually speak. So that way we won't get into the 25 people join, they don't realize their mic's on, there's all sorts of feedback coming through. I can automatically mute them and have that set up. Only authenticated users can join, so that basically means only people with a district email address can join that have a Zoom account. And then I also have right here automatically record the meeting, and it does give us two options. You can record it locally on your computer if you want that local copy, but you're not going to get the transcription or anything like that. You're just going to get a video file of that meeting. But if I select automatically record in the cloud, as soon as I start that meeting, it's going to start recording. And then it's automatically going to go into that recording section up here in the upper left-hand corner when it's all done for me to be able to access and get access to. And finally, the last piece in scheduling our meeting is the alternative host area. So this is where if somebody's in my Zoom domain, so it's a co-teacher or something like that, I won't be able to get there on time, or I'm co-presenting with somebody else, I can set them up as an alternative host. So if I add Chris as my alternative host, in this case within Zoom, he'll be able to actually log in and start the meeting rather than myself. So I can go ahead and hit save. There's my save option. You can see now my meeting's created. And right here, there's a copy invitation link. So I can copy that invitation. I can email it to who I have to, or if you look up at the top, you can actually see if I'm a Google district that's using Google Calendar, I can select the Google Calendar. It'll ask me for my sign up, and it'll automatically put that Zoom meeting in there. Or in Outlook, what it'll do is it'll actually download a calendar file, which I just have to show in folder, and I'm going to open it with Outlook. So it's just going to open up my mail, and there's my meeting. So it's already set up as a calendar invite. All I would have to do at this point is, I can do a quick save to save it, and then I can open it up, and I can hit the invite attendees, and then I can type in the email address of the folks that I want to invite. Or if I'm using something like Google Classroom, I can just copy that invitation, paste the information into a post on Google Classroom, and they'll be able to connect easily through there. I'll go ahead and not save changes and close out of there. And close out of this stuff. There we go. So that's kind of the setup of getting our meetings started and getting them scheduled within the system. What I want to do now, and I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen.
Did have, Derek, one question came in
Sure.
that they don't see the telephone option. Is that something that districts can actually opt to have turned off across their entire district?
It could be, and depending on the district. So to kind of give you the landscape of, if you're accounts were purchased through Moric, we would have a different default set. If your district, purchased through OCM, that's all the accounts are coming from the same place. We're just managing it a little bit differently. So they may have settings on their end, which we don't have on our end. So if you don't have that option, it may just be a result of who initially configured the account.
And your district tech coordinator should know who it was purchased through, so they should know who to reach out to. So I would just recommend to reach out to that district tech coordinator, and they can hopefully get any options enabled that you need.
Yep. And also, in some cases, the tech coordinator actually has the options to go in and turn that stuff on, just depending on how the management was set up. So I think that would be your first place. So, okay. So with that, what we're going to do now is I'm going to hook up a second computer, which I hope works the right way like it did earlier. So bear with me 1 second here.
We're going to try and show you Zoom through Zoom, so it's a little tricky.
Yeah, and I can't just share a screen and share Zoom through Zoom, so bear with me 1 second here while we share this content out. I'm just going to switch my cameras through. There's one. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. I also have like 12 camera sources, so that's why it's taking me so long to... nuts. All right.
While Derek is getting that set up, I just want to remind everybody, if you didn't already, please type in your full first and last name in the chat, just so we have it for attendance purposes. Some of the names came up on the screen as like first initial, last name. So I just want to make sure I have them right for attendance. So if you haven't already sent it along, I appreciate you doing that.
I went the wrong way. That was the issue, Chris. There we go. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes. Yep, we can hear you.
All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the camera on, and I apologize for the screen within a screen within a screen within a screen, but that's unfortunately the way that this is sharing out right now. So with this pulled up, you should be able to see kind of the content that I'm sharing, but this also kind of gives me the landscape to be able to show you guys all of the tools that you'll have access to within the meeting itself. So with that, what I'm going to do is up here in the upper left-hand corner, you can see this is where my participants are. So you can see everybody that's on my list, and you can see I can scroll down. I can also see who's got their video on, who doesn't, who has their mics muted. And it also gives me control. So in this case of Chris, I can go into his account, hit unmute. Should prompt him to unmute, and then
a button pops up and it says, would you like to unmute or stay muted?
And then I can also do the same thing where I can come in and I can just shut them off. So even if somebody does join the meeting and they don't realize that their mic's on, I can just go find the culprit and just hit the mute button. The other options we have when I highlight somebody in the participant areas, if I click on the more button, I can ask them to start their video. So if I do want to see them, I can prompt them to say, hey, we're asking you to turn on your video. Please allow. It won't just force turn on their camera. It will prompt them to say, hey, can you turn on your camera? And especially for attendance purposes, I know some districts are requiring students to at least turn the webcam on to show that they're in the seat, and then they're allowed to shut the camera off after the fact. Yes, that's another good point, Chris. Zoom does not take attendance for you. So you would have to go in and do a quick roll call and make sure all your students are in. Some of the other options that we have here is because I'm a host, I can turn anybody into a host on the fly. I can withdraw co-host permission. So if I don't want Chris to access any more information or be able to present, I can just withdraw it. If I want to assign him to be the transcriber of this and type in the words as we go, I can assign that to him. But I can also go in and rename them as well. So if Chris just came in as Chris, I could come in, rename him, and I can retype his name right in the box right there. Some of the other options within the participant menu is right here. We have basically little emojis. So if I hit no, you'll see that I get a notification that, if I ask a quick yes, no question, see that little red X pop up. I can hit go faster. I can hit go slower. So if you guys kind of play with those, I should see a bunch of options pop up as far as, and then also under the more menu, I can say we need a break, I'm away, clap your hands, thumbs up, thumbs down for content. So if I click on any one of those at any time, you can see the little thumbs down comes up, and all I have to do is click on it again to get rid of it. It'll also let me know of all the other emojis that have popped up within my screen at any given time. So that's just one of the different pieces that you can kind of set up within the participant area. Is I can do the emojis there. I also, down here in the lower left corner,
I'm sorry, Derek, before you move on, can you quickly just re-show how to right-click and rename someone?
Sure. So all I would have to do is highlight their name. So in this case, like if I take Rebecca and I click on more, there's a rename option here. And I can just go in, if I want to put the space in, I can do that, and then you can see it renames it right here. The other thing that you'll notice is that when I'm on an attendee, yes, so that's exactly what I was going to talk about. If I need to kick a student out of a meeting, so let's say I'm going to pick on Rebecca again here. If I click on that more tab right here, I can put them in a waiting room. So basically, I can kick them out of the meeting, and they sit in that waiting room until either I let them back in or they just sit there for the rest of the time, or I can literally just remove them from the meeting. If they try to get back in, I do have the option down here in the participant area, there's these little 3 dots. If I click on that and I hit that lock meeting, now at this point, after my meeting has started, you see that little prompt comes up. I've locked the meeting and nobody else can join. So that way, if a student's late, they had to be on class on time, I can click on those 3 dots, lock that meeting, and then they won't be able to get back in. So if I do end up, dismissing a student from my class, I know they won't be able to get back in after I hit that lock button, no matter how hard they try. I can also play an enter and exit chime as well. So I can click that option, so now anybody that comes in or leaves the meeting, I'll get a little ding that pops up. And then a lot of these other ones, you can see the mute participants, allow participants to unmute themselves. If I shut that off, basically what that means is you won't be able to speak unless I allow it. So if you don't want your students to interrupt while you're lecturing and you have times, at the end of a lecture for them to ask questions, if I turn that option on, essentially their microphone will be locked until I physically go in and hit the button here and say unmute. And what it'll do is it'll send a message to that person saying the host is trying to unmute you. Do you accept? So I'm gonna hit that little checkbox right there. A couple other things in the chat here, so you can see we have the chat turned on. I can turn that off down here. So if I just come in and click that little chat box, chat's gone. All right, turn it back on. You'll also see, depending on how I have my chat set up, I can send individual messages to folks. So if I wanted to send a message, directly to Chris, you can see it pops up as privately, and I can message him. I can also, over here, you can see I can set it up so that participants can chat with nobody, to only the host, so that way then all the students only have the ability to ask you questions through chat. Everyone publicly, or everyone publicly and privately. The other nice option is there is a save chat feature. So if you do want to save a conversation that's going on within the room itself, I can hit save chat. And basically, it creates a little text document that I can open up, and there's a record of my chat. So those are the options within the participant area and the group chat. The next piece that I want to talk about is the tools. So down here at the bottom of the screen, you can see a lot of the different options that we have within Zoom. So right away, you can see right here on the left, here's my mute button. Here's my stop video button. So if I stop video, it'll shut off my camera. If I turn it back on, it'll turn it on. I can also toggle sources. So what'll happen sometimes, especially if you're new to Zoom, is everything will be hooked up. Your speakers are plugged in, everything's working, but for some reason you just can't hear or see what's going on. And sometimes it's just a matter of what Zoom chose to use as your sound. So next to the microphone icon here, there's a little arrow. And if I click that arrow, it's basically going to pull up, here's all the devices that I could use as a speaker. Here's all the devices as I could use as a microphone. So in this case, I have an external microphone plugged in, but you can see I can use my Realtek, which is the one built into my computer, and the same thing for my speakers. So sometimes the speaker will be set up to, same as system or a cam link or something that doesn't have sound coming out of it. So that's just one of the settings to kind of keep an eye on as you're getting started with meetings and if you're having those audio and video issues. The next portion is our video. So the same thing, if I click that little option here, you can see I have a bunch of different camera sources. So I can have either my webcam, my integrated webcam, which is built into my laptop, and then I have a bunch of other kind of camera sources that I have set up. The other piece that I talked about earlier is in this video area. This is where we can choose our virtual background. So if I want to put that, kind of green screen thing behind me, right? If I hit that menu and I go to choose virtual background, and can everybody see that window okay? I just want to be sure. Okay. You can see it opens right up to my virtual backgrounds, and as soon as I click on one of these, it defaults me out pretty well. So it's better if you're on like a solid color wall behind you, but you can see for the most part, there's a little lag with it and things like that. But I can go in and I can kind of set up my own background. If I have a green screen, it'll just kind of use it more as like a true green screen, but if I click it off, it'll adapt to my background that's behind me. So in this case, we have a picture of our boardroom here at Mobosi's, and I can choose that if I want to give the illusion that I'm, in the building. But then I also have the option to add images or add video. So I can add my own custom image, or if I have a video that I want looping in the background, I can set that up as well. So that's the virtual background area. Next to that, we have the security area. So if I click on that, basically it gives us a lot of the same options that we had within the participant and chat area. You can see I can lock my meeting. I can enable the waiting room on the fly. I can allow participants to share my screen. So by default, I have it so none of the participants can share their screen. If I do turn on that button, you should now have a little green button that pops up in the middle. But you can see some of the other options as far as being able to rename themselves. I can, click on somebody, and if I wanted to remove them, I can hit remove them, or I could report them. My participants area, basically if I toggle that on and off, you can see it just turns on the participant over here on the right, so I can just kind of see who's in the classroom. Right here under polls, I can select that, and it'll basically open up a meeting window, so I can do it on the fly quick, or I can go in and create them beforehand. But I can create a quick on-the-fly poll and send it out to my participants. Go ahead and close that up. Our chat feature, so again, just toggling it on and off. My share screen option, so when I hit this, let's see what happens. All right, I don't want to do that. What typically will happen is you'll get a window that pops up that'll say, what screen do you want to share? And typically if you're on, a Chromebook or a desktop or something like that, it'll pull up your desktop. And then you can just say, just share my screen. It'll automatically push it out. One of the other options that we have, let's see if I go into, okay. There is an advanced option as well. So kind of the setup that I have right now is I'm presenting on one laptop, and then over here, I actually have this laptop set up as a camera source. So basically, it's pulling my secondary laptop like a camera feed, and I'm able to do that. So if we think about that from the content, yeah, geez, you did unlock the room, Chris. Okay. But if we're looking at that from like a document camera aspect, if you want to use a document camera, I can actually share out a document camera through Zoom, and my students will still be able to see me. So we do have the option through the share screen. Down here at the bottom is the pause stop recording. So if I don't necessarily need to auto record every time, here's somebody. If I don't need to auto record all of my meetings, I can either toggle it off when it starts, or I can kind of start and stop it on the fly. So that means I can basically open up a meeting. If I decide, okay, yes, this is something I want recorded, I can hit that recording option, and it'll ask me, do I want to record locally, which means do I want to save it to my local device, or do I want to record it into the cloud, which will automatically put it in the cloud. Another thing to mention about storage within the Zoom cloud is it's fairly limitless. Every now and again, I know if you order Zoom through the RIC, we'll send out an email like every 3-4 months to say, hey, if you could go in and clean up your recordings just to kind of get the accounts cleared up and clear up some of the space, that would be great. But for the most part, like I said, you can upload quite a bit of stuff.
Once you've recorded to the cloud, all of the recordings are downloadable too. So one of the things that we do is we record to the cloud, because when you do that, it automatically does the transcript as well. But then what we do is we download the video file and we put it into Google Drive, which will be unlimited for you. So then you can just delete it out of your Zoom cloud and just link to it right within Google Drive instead. And that'll save you from having to worry about any space issues down the road.
Yep. And like I said, any given time we can pause or stop, and it'll basically stop the recording up here. If it's meant to go to the cloud, it'll render the recording and shoot us an email when it's ready to go. The closed captioning feature, like I said, this is basically we can add a third-party closed captioning service to it, but most of the time you're setting it up to assign a participant to type. So basically I can make Chris type a transcript if I really wanted to, or I can set it up to myself. Let's see, I saw. Okay, so the question that came up is how easy is it to post your virtual classroom into each class they have? So depending on how you're doing it, so let's say you're using your personal room. I'm going to go back into my meeting information here. Just doing the window thing. Yeah, let me do it this way. I'm going to stop sharing right here for a minute. Stop sharing that one, and I'm going to go back out and share my main screen here. There we go. So in the meeting itself, basically all I would have to do is in my meetings, depending if I want to, use my meeting that I created, or if I go into my personal room, here's the hyperlink. So I can just set it up and say, here's the link. If there's a password, there's the passcode, and that's how they would enter it. So all I have to do is copy that link, use the passcode, post it within a Google Classroom to set it up. Same thing goes for those scheduled meetings. I would just have to come in, hit edit. Oh, where'd you go? Sorry. Once I click on the My Meetings here, you can see here's the link. I can also copy an invitation. So if I hit copy invitation, you can see I can take all of this information and just do a quick copy meeting invitation, paste it in Google Classroom, and then my students would be able to join the link directly from there. So really it's just a matter of copy and pasting from the meeting itself. It just depends on, if you want to use that personal room all the time and just use that as your link. That way you can just put it in once and it'll be there. Or like I said, if you're scheduling those meetings out or scheduling them a week at a time, you would just have to copy the invitation and post it in your classroom for that particular day of classes.
I had another question come up, Derek.
Yep.
If they have students click on a meeting or on a different link in Google Classroom while they're on a Zoom call, will their faces disappear? Basically, will they leave the Zoom meeting?
If they were to open up a different Zoom meeting while they're in the one,
Or just any other link while they're in the Zoom call?
if they're in a link, like if it's a link out to another resource, so say you're sharing something with your students, no. If it's another Zoom meeting link, then yes, it will probably boot them out of the one and try to join the other. But if you're just sharing resources out to your students or anything along those lines, you should be able to, post those links. They'll be able to click on it, and basically it'll open up in a window on top of the Zoom meeting that they can kind of look at stuff, and they'll still be able to hear you, but they might have to move their window or minimize it to actually see you in the Zoom meeting again. So it'll be kind of a window on top of a window type thing. Can I create a different link for each different class period? Yes. You would just have to schedule a individual meeting for each individual class period. So it would take some work on the on the scheduling side of things. You'd have to type in those every single period and create a meeting for every single period, but it is something that you do have the ability to do.
In that meeting creator too, don't forget you can do recurring meetings. So if you meet them at the same time every day, you could just do a recurring meeting for every Monday through Friday, and just set it to go off every week at the same time, and then your students would be able to click on that meeting link to get in.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump back into my picture within a picture here, which means I got to come over here. Share my content. There we go, pop it up again. Okay. So a couple other things to talk about here before we kind of wrap up is the 3 different options that we have at the end here. One of the big ones is breakout rooms. So what this will allow you to do is this will allow you to kind of put groups of participants inside of a breakout room. So essentially it will let them, it'll push them to their own individual room. And to kind of show you what I mean by it, if I click on the breakout rooms here, I can assign 43 participants automatically into, let's say 6 rooms. And then what that will do is it'll automatically create the rooms for me, and it will send you to those rooms. As a host, I'll have the ability to go in and kind of bounce in and out of those rooms. And then when I'm done, myself as the host, right from my screen here, I have the ability to kind of call everybody back. So to kind of show you what I mean, I'm going to go ahead and create these rooms. And I'm going to open all these rooms, and you're going to see everything kind of flash quick, and you're going to be put into your own individual room. And then I'm going to pull everybody back. And you should be getting an invitation to join those rooms. And I see a bunch of people jumped in, some folks didn't. I'm just waiting for the stragglers that are out there to pop in. Yeah, thanks, Chris. I was going to address that when everybody came back, too. All right, so we just got a few more people, and they'll be force back into the room here in a minute. But you'll see for those that are here, what it looks like when the breakout rooms close. It'll automatically close and invite everybody back to the main room. So that's the breakout room feature. And to address one of the questions that popped up, a couple things. If the student hits ask for help in a breakout room, I'll get kind of a notification within the breakout room in the main window saying that this group asked for help. So I'll get a notification in the windows. If I'm scrolling up and down, I'll be able to see it. And one of the other questions that pops up is for kind of lower elementary kids that would be using Zoom, essentially all your students should have to do is click on the hyperlink. And especially for lower elementary, if you don't want to put a password in, if you don't want to put in that waiting room, all they'd have to do is log into Google Classroom or whatever you're using, click on the link, and it's going to open up the meeting for them. Really, like all these tools and everything else are kind of put in the presenter's hands. So you don't necessarily have to take advantage of all the features that are built into this, and all the students are really going to have to do is click on the link that's provided to them, and it should join them to the meeting automatically. So like Chris said, depending on what features you want to use, really for the students, it's just going to be a matter of they're going to click on the link, and everything else is kind of controlled by the user that's running the meeting. So a few other things, and then we'll wrap up here, is next to our breakout rooms, we have reactions. So basically, we have a hand clap and a thumbs up, and if I click on that, it basically puts a little hand clap, on my video, whereas, over here in the participant area, it puts it in the participant area. So you can have a clap or a thumbs up. There are more emojis coming in one of the new updates. They're just not here yet. And then finally, earlier when we connected that live on Facebook and live on YouTube options in our settings, under this More tab, it gives us the ability to, like I said, if I want to push this directly out to my YouTube channel, so all of my students will have access to it at once, I can hit live on YouTube, and it'll pull up my Google account. I just have to log into it, and it'll automatically start streaming to my channel. So that's kind of the last feature that's built into that. So with that, it's now 2:02. If you guys have any questions for us, please feel free to pop them in the chat. Or if you want to, unmute your mic and ask a question, you should have the ability to do so. Let me just make sure of that. Yes. And if not, Chris and I will hang out here for a few minutes for any questions that are out there. I'll also, at the conclusion of today, I'll send out another resource of a website that we put together kind of at a state level for a lot of the distance learning technologies, but within that site, they have a lot of Zoom tutorials to kind of follow up with. So it kind of breaks everything down step by step. So I'll be sure to follow up with that resource as well. But like I said, if there are, no other questions, you guys are free to leave. And if there are, hang out and we'll do our best to answer them. And I can see a couple here. So, okay, one thing I didn't mention within Zoom is up in the upper right-hand corner of your window, there is a little grid icon that pops up. And actually, I'm going to reshare my screen to show you that again, because that's a little thing that I missed, which is a big thing. So let me share that content out again. Okay, so up in the upper right-hand corner of my Zoom room, there's this little option here that says Gallery View. If I hit that, it'll pull up a gallery of everybody that's in the room. You can see because I'm sharing my screen, it just does a strip here. But if I stop sharing, and you guys probably won't be able to see it, it'll pull up a grid view of everybody that's in the room, and it'll also put it on different pages. And I can see right now, like I have 25 non-video participants. So I only see the people that have their video turned on. But if I hit that gallery view, I will see the gallery of all of my users that are in this meeting. So if I want to look at all of my face or all of my kids' faces and see all of them as I'm having the meeting. I just hit that gallery view and I'll be able to see everybody in the meeting. I can also see it, from an administrative perspective, if somebody's like sitting there with their head down, or if they're, on their phone doing this when they should be paying attention or something like that. If I hit that gallery view while I'm talking, I'll be able to see all the cameras that are individually on. And then to toggle back, I just have to go up in the upper right again, hit that speaker view, and I'll pop it back to that individual view.
The other question was, how many students can be in a Zoom meeting at once?
So you guys, and we're all purchasing the same Zoom accounts. It just might be through Mork or OCM. You will have the ability to have 300 students concurrently in a room at once. So you can have up to 300 participants. Okay, a couple other questions. Is there a setting where I can see students but they can't see each other? The only way you can do that is if you kind of toggle off their video and individually turn it on. So there isn't a group setting that only me as the teacher get to see the video of all the other students. So unfortunately, if they put it in gallery view and they start making faces at each other, there's not much you can do about that unless you kind of force shut off the camera so they can't do that. Will each breakout room be recorded? Yes. So there will be a separate recording of each breakout room. So if it is content that you want to share after the fact, you have the ability to grab those individual videos and post them out as well. And I'm just scrolling through here to see if there's any other questions. Okay. I think I got most of them. If I didn't, just type them in the chat. Yes, my Central Valley folks, we just got the okay to add the accounts today. I'm just waiting for the roster from Steve. Once I get that roster, what's going to happen with you guys is I'll probably send out a blanket email just saying you've been approved for these accounts. And then what's going to happen next is you're going to get an email from zoom.us saying, hey, I'd like to activate my account. And as soon as you do, you guys are off to the races. So, yep, we got approval for that this morning. I'm just waiting for Steve to give me the roster, and I'll get him into the system. So that should be hopefully in the next day or two.
Hey, Derek.
Yeah.
How come I've already been able to go into a Zoom account from CVA if we haven't been authorized yet?
So here's the other thing: is if you set up a free account at any point, which you might have done, or it might have come through another program or something like that, you still have access to Zoom. And if it's the free version of Zoom, you have what's called the basic account, which will only allow, I believe, a 40 or 45-minute meeting. And, it kind of limits you with everything. So even though you've set it up with your CVA account, what's going to happen is when you get the new invite, it's basically going to migrate that account from the free one to the paid one in this version. So,
oh, excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you have meetings already scheduled, if you have stuff already ready to go, all the link integrity is going to stay the same, so you're not going to have to reschedule anything. It'll all stay the same. It's just basically I'm moving it from one container to another and adding the additional options for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. No, if you already have Zoom uploaded or downloaded and installed, you don't have to uninstall it again. It's not a separate software. We're basically just migrating the account. So even though it's dealalone@mork.org, when I log in with that new account, I'm basically moving it from account A to account B, and I won't see a difference other than probably where the meeting link is coming from. And I'll have more options available. That'll be the only difference that you see.
If you guys have any questions as you get started, feel free to email Derek or I at any time. I'll put in the chat our email addresses so you guys have access to them.
Yep, and like I said, I'll also follow up with our email addresses through my learning plan and send you the resources from some of the websites that we help kind of put content together for. And like I said, we'll hang out for a little while. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to pop them in. If not, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.